Begin.
Hi, I'm Dr. Gilda Martinez-Alba, and I'm here to tell you a little bit about English language learners today. The title of my presentation is Through the Eyes of the English Language Learner. And this topic is very interesting to me because I am one, and I still find that to this day I'm learning a lot of English idioms and different phrasing, so it seems to be a lifelong process. So anyways, when I was asked to come and present about this, I was very excited because this is definitely a topic of interest, and I teach some of the ESOL courses here in the graduate reading program at Towson. So to begin, where are the ESOL students from, or the English language learners from? You know, did they go to school regularly? What types of instruction did they receive? And was any of the instruction in English? These are the kinds of questions that you might want to ask when you do encounter students that are English language learners. Because it could very well be the case that they are from the United States and that their parents decided to teach them their native language and create bilingual students. You know, did they come from another country and they went to school regularly, or do they have gaps? If they received instruction and it was in English, or they went to a bilingual school, that would certainly make a difference. And what types of English instruction, if any, did they receive? If they received it mostly oral or writing or reading, again, that would help, finding out that information would help you with the student in the class. So here I have some students from throughout the world, just to give you an idea, so that when students do come to your class, you have some background of what it is that the class that they came from might have looked like. So here we have a school in Guatemala. This is a school in Tibet, which you see is outside. This is a school in the Caribbean, and having been in the Caribbean, you know it's probably pretty hot in there with those windows open like that. A school in India. Here they turned around and smiled for the picture. Very nice. We have a classroom for students with disabilities in Guatemala. I say this is a hot classroom just by looking at the metal walls. It's also in Guatemala. Another class in Guatemala. This one looks a little cooler with the cinder block. And here we have a colorful school bus, which is not just for going to school. If you've been to South America, you might have seen those buses are used for transportation. Here we have a packed classroom in Australia, another classroom in Tibet, and you might notice that in this classroom, the teacher and the students also are barefoot. So if you did happen to have a student that comes in the class and takes off their shoes, you know, maybe that's something that was happening in their classroom. Here's another classroom in Tibet, so here you can see the students barefoot. And a Sims classroom. This is one of the only games that I've actually ever been any good at, because it's very hard to die, even though I would make people depressed, but they usually didn't die. But yes, in the Sims classroom, you could create anything that you would like, your ideal classroom. So I guess my question to you is, what does your classroom look like? Think about that, and think about how that compares to the types of classrooms that we just looked at. You know, maybe you have a similar situation where you have a crowded classroom, or maybe you have a classroom that is ideal, and you have a lot of space, and you have large tables, and you have technology. And so what does your classroom look like? Think about that when you are thinking about those, where the students might have come from. And then when you're trying to figure out a little bit more information about the students, you know, you might want to send home a home survey and find out if they went to school, find out what grade they were in, how they were doing, and what was the language used. Now I know in Maryland, the Maryland State Department of Education, on their website, they do have some surveys that can be sent home in a variety of languages, so that's a good resource, a place to look for home surveys. But what should the surveys or any information that is sent home look like? Well, you really want to think probably less is more. So not a blank page, but you shouldn't have very lengthy text, because it could be the case that they're not very literate in their native language. Maybe they are, maybe they're completely literate, but just in case, you know, if you send home home surveys or any information that doesn't have too much text, you'll definitely help with helping them understand it. in their native language if possible. Of course, you don't want to use freetranslation.com or translate it on Google if you don't know the language very well, because you will probably mix up the syntax and the word, or the word order. So that would make it hard to understand even if you were able to read it. So yeah, so if you're going to send something home in the native language, make sure you have somebody that can really speak the language so that it's a clear document that you're sending home. And using pictures and visuals will also help with the comprehension of it for the parents that that can't really read as well. The other thing you want to look into are motivation surveys, because you want to see if the students are motivated to read and what are the kinds of things that they might be motivated about. So here I have a link that is the Garfield survey. Perhaps you are familiar with it. I know that in the reading world we use it quite often, and it is also a good one for the English language learner. Why? Because it has a lot of pictures of Garfield, and you could actually see if Garfield looks happy or Garfield looks sad. So it makes it easy for the student to see, to figure out which is the way that they feel when you're asking the question. And so here you go. And for younger students, you might want to keep it a little bit more simple with just some plain happy faces, yes or no kind of responses, and ask them questions, very basic questions, to not make it too long, because with Garfield the problem is that it's a little bit lengthy. So if the student does have trouble understanding English, they might just circle all the happy Garfields just because they're feeling happy today. So with a shorter survey, with just getting to the core of the questions that you want to find out, you might have more success in actually finding out if they're happy or sad about the questions. And then if you have an older student and they're more at an intermediate level, you can use this survey. I have the link there provided. It's an adolescent motivation to read profile. It does have a lot more questions. It's a lot lengthier, but you could also help the student by reading it aloud to them, and then you could also add in visuals if you think that would help. So when you find out about the student's motivation to read, you also want to find out if what are their interests, because in general girls tend to prefer fiction, whereas boys prefer nonfiction. Now that's definitely not the case always, because I know that I prefer nonfiction. So what do you prefer? Think about that, and then you want to make connections with the students and share with them what are the kinds of things that you like to read about. So is there anything that you're currently reading? Well, I am currently reading a book about hyperpolyglot, which is a person that can speak multiple languages, and they're almost like a savant. So of course, what is that? Nonfiction. So yeah, so think about what you like to read, and then also, like I said, share that with them, because that really would help with motivation of reading. If they see that you're excited about reading, and then you get them excited, and then you ask them about what are the kinds of things they like to do. So you can find books about the things that they do when they're not reading, so that way you bring those books in and they read those things. It's a lot more exciting. And then if you wanted to look at different surveys, there are the different ones through the Assessment for Reading Instruction textbook, and I have here the website that you can get it through Amazon. I do not get commission. I'm just telling you because it's a book that I have used multiple times through the years, and it does have quite a variety of not only motivation and interest surveys, but it also has other assessments that you can find out how your students are doing in terms of reading and writing and listening and speaking too. So it's definitely a good choice. So all this to say, you really want to get to know your student and establish rapport as much as possible. And if they don't want to talk, you need to become the chatty patty. Well, you know what? I was actually heard it's not the chatty. I like to say chatty patty because it rhymes, but it's really supposed to be chatty Cathy is the doll, is what I heard. But the thing about it is that you want to keep talking to them, even though you might say, because I've heard so many teachers say, oh, I don't really know if they understand what I'm saying. I feel like I'm talking and I shouldn't, and I don't know if they get it. Well, the truth is that you want to just keep talking, talk, because just like an infant that is learning to talk, the student that is learning to talk might understand a lot more than they can actually tell you or to respond. And some students are actually a little bit shy, and they could go through a silent period that could take up to a year. So as a teacher, you only have them for a year. So you might think, wow, this whole year I'm really, I really don't know how much they have learned. I really don't know how much English they can understand, or because they're not really talking to me. But just keep in mind that it could take up to a year, and that this is very common. So it's just keep talking, and just try to make situations, which I'll tell you about, that will help them feel comfortable, and with that establishing of rapport, like I said, where you talk about the things that you're interested in, that you're reading, that you do when you're not reading, and trying to get them to talk about it, having that comfort level will help them to get talking about other things that are more academic related. So yes, find activities, find excuses to get them talking. So book talks, for example, are a good way to get talking, and it just makes a fun way to share. So I know that I have done book talks with students in pairs. So pairs are really helpful because it's nicer, it's more comfortable to just share with one person, your feelings and your highlights of a certain book than it would be to share with the whole class. So what I suggest is that you share with the whole class. You do the book talk or the book commercial, and then you have them pick a book that they are currently reading in your class or that they've brought in from home, and you have them do a book talk. So today I will do the book talk just to show you what I mean of Martí and the Mango. So Martí and the Mango, as you can see, Martí is most likely this mouse, right? And the mouse, I don't know if you noticed, but the mouse is wearing what's called a guayabera, which is a shirt that my grandfather used to wear all the time. My grandfather was from Cuba, so that's a very typical Cuban shirt. And so Martí looks like he's thinking, and he was thinking, because if it's Martí and the mango in the story, he's thinking about maybe a mango, right? And he has no idea what a mango is, so he goes around and he asks the different animals, what is a mango? And so he goes to the cockroach, the friend of the cockroach, and the cockroach, he says to the cockroach, is this a mango? And the cockroach tells him, no, this is not a mango. This is a coconut. A mango, and you see he writes his notes, is softer than a coconut. So you'll have to read the book to find out more about Martí and the mango and see why is he looking for this mango. But so I really like that story. I don't know if you noticed, because of the fact that I do like the illustrations a lot. The author is also the illustrator. And anyway, so yes, when you do a book talk, you want to show the cover. You want to point out maybe one or two pictures, but you don't want to give it away. It's kind of like when you go and you watch a movie trailers, the commercials for movies, and you've seen way too many trailers, and then by the time you get to the movie, all the funny parts have been given away. You don't want to do that in your book talk, right? You want to make it exciting. You want them to read about it, but then you provide the book. You have it there sitting in your classroom library, and you don't give it all away. And like I said, then you have them do the book talks in the pairs. And you might pick books that are based on the interest inventory. So when you found out that some of the students like playing soccer in the summer, or some of the students really enjoy skateboarding, or some of the students really like to take ballet lessons, or whatever it is that you find out they do, try to get books and do book talks about those topics. You might want to find books that represent their culture, and you definitely want to have books that have pictures in them. At least have a variety of levels. So some with pictures, maybe some with a little less pictures, depending on the age level of your students. But definitely try to add in books or magazines or newspapers that have pictures, because the English learner relies heavily on the pictures. And speaking is very scary. So you definitely want to do speaking in small groups. Pairs are perfect. If you've ever tried to learn a language, you'll know that if you try to use it with a native speaker because you're trying to show off the little bit of that language that you know, if they laugh at you, it's devastating. So you definitely want to keep it as non-threatening as possible, and that's why I say pairs are perfect. And then also another way to get students talking is through book clubs, because book clubs get people excited about reading, because now not only do you get to read a book, but you also get to talk about it again in small groups. Oprah has millions of people reading, or she had millions of people reading. I think she still has the book clubs through her website. But yes, if she could get millions of people reading, you can certainly get your class excited about reading. So you can have a variety of book clubs, not just a one-time shot. You know, you can have it within the class that there are different books being read, and that then you have these literature circles or idea circles. Idea circles being if they're reading nonfiction. So it might be that they're not just reading a novel, but that they're reading something that is nonfiction. And then have them write in journals before they actually have the literature circle or the time to have discussions. The reason being that the English learner needs time to process the language. So, you know, it's one thing for them to sit there and, you know, you've read the book and now you have to start talking about it. But if you actually could sit there and think about it and write down a few things, and then when you go to talk about it, you have already processed the language, that's really very helpful. So yeah, so have them journal about it first before they speak. So have you ever been reading and you come to a word that you cannot pronounce? Well, this happens all the time to the English language learner because they've never seen the word. So what do? You do read alouds, because the read alouds, you're pronouncing the words, and they especially with big books, those are very helpful because you could be pointing to the words, or if you have multiple copies of books, and they could be pointing to the words or following along as you read, so that then they can see how you pronounce the different words. It also helps model fluency, you know, and expression. And if you use realia or props, you know, again, that adds in another dimension. 3D visuals. So, you know, hats, puppets, any visuals that you could add would help with the comprehension. And choral reading is also very helpful because in choral reading, all the students are reading at the same time, and then that way, if you have one English learner that, let's say, is a very beginning English learner, they could try to follow along, but it's not going to be so obvious if they're making errors, if they're stumbling along, because of the fact that everybody is reading at the same she had written it in Spanish. And the other students that were a little bit further along in their English language development were writing it in English, or I helped them write it in English. So you could really do it based on the level of your students. Okay, so here we go. This is my photo essay example, and it's always good to have a model because students then see this and say, oh, that's what you're talking about. That's the kind of thing that you want us to do. That's how much you want us to explain each picture. So you'll see in my photo essay that I have just a few sentences for each picture, and again, based on the level of your students. So this would be probably for a beginning, intermediate, in terms of the length of the sentences and for each picture, or intermediate student, because I'll have a variety of pictures. But what did they do on Mother's Day in the Martinez home? This is my mother's house over in Miami, and I did happen to go for this particular Mother's Day to my mother's house. And I do have the book with me. I have to get it. My mother wanted us to come and visit her for Mother's Day, so we went for a visit. She was very happy to see us, as were her chihuahuas, Lupita and Bruiser. That's Lupita, and that's Bruiser. Aren't they so cute? This is Lupita. She is doing the Mexican, she is doing a dance to the Mexican hat dance song that goes da-dun, 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 da-dun. And my mom says she's doing it better than ever. But she's been doing it the same for the past 10 years. My brothers, uncle, aunt, and cousin all came by to celebrate the day. We also called lots of people to say Happy Mother's Day. And you can see that's my aunt, my brother, that's me, my daughter, my uncle, and my cousin and my uncle. It happened to be my brother's birthday in a few days, so we sang him happy birthday and had some chocolate ice cream cake. He wanted Iron Man on his birthday, even though he was turning 27 years old and is a lawyer. The cake the green chunks on the grass are supposed to be grass. The cake decorator must have been new, as you can see, because isn't that an ugly cake? My uncle spent a long time reading the Sunday newspaper. My brother spent time on his computer making DVDs. My aunt and mother spent a lot of time in the kitchen. They were in there early in the morning making white rice, black beans, and pork. And my aunt fried the fried green plantains, which are right there, in case you haven't had them before. These are the green fried plantains. I love them, and so does my mom. I think Bruiser would like to try them. After eating, my brother, uncle, and cousin took turns playing the guitar. They sang songs in English by the Beatles, Jack Johnson, Elton John, and other bands. I am lucky they play really well. Otherwise, it would have been terrible to sit through it. My daughter took a nap after eating. I didn't because I had to get us ready to go back home. Then, when I was getting ready, my mom wanted to show me how Bruiser enjoys sunbathing. It makes her smile. You see her smile? She does actually smile. Unfortunately, the day just flew by. It was time to go back home. My grandmother used to say, good times go by as quickly as a rocket. We must have had a very, very good time. What did you do on Mother's Day in your home? So you see, after I had, I would model how to do a photo essay that I had actually done, like this one. Then I would talk about things that helped with reading comprehension, if it was a teacher, or maybe with the students too. So in this particular book, was it predictable? Well, it sort of was, because you knew it was about Mother's Day, and you knew I was going to be talking about what are the different things that we did in this house. Did it represent culture? Absolutely, because as you saw, we had the different foods. Not that it's all about food, but you saw the Miami, you know, the different scene in Miami with the house and the Spanish tile on the roof and that kind of thing. Similar experiences, well, if you celebrate Mother's Day, then, you know, you might be, or if you celebrate anything that's with the family, that would, again, you know, create a similar experience, because I know some English learners, depending on what country they're from, they might not celebrate Mother's Day, but it would be something that they would learn about, that we celebrate here, so, you know, it would maybe perhaps become a similar experience. Did the visuals support the text? That is so important. Again, I keep mentioning the importance of the visuals. So I tried to, you know, when you have the photo essay, you can explain exactly what's going on in the picture. So the visuals always support the text, or should support the text very well. When you're looking for books, you definitely want to look for books that the visuals support the text. As an English speaker, you know, you might forget the importance of looking at the visuals. So what you want to do is try to cover up the words of picture books, let's say, and just look at the pictures and see if you can understand what's going on in the story, or have get the gist of the story. If you can't, then you might need to add some other visuals. With the photo essay, the visuals should support the text. Is it interesting and imaginative? Well, it's what we did that day, so hey. And I use natural language? Well, I thought I did, so anyways. But these are the kinds of things that you want to see if the text includes, because those are things that help with comprehension. The other thing that's exciting to do is to then make class books, because, you know, the thing about it is that the more students read, the better they will get, right? That's, research shows that again and again. And I have some references at the end of the PowerPoint that support that. But yes, if you get students excited about reading, like I said, with the interest inventories, but also with these LEAs, the language experience approach, where they dictate the story, or the photo essays, you know, and then you create a class book and you put them in your classroom library, students will gravitate towards those. I know teachers that I have talked to that make class books, whether they were LEAs or not, just class books in general, have told me that their students really get excited about that. So these are just two different ways to make class books that students can be excited about. And other things that you can do is you could have them look at different authors' styles and have them write in follow that format. You know, and the thing about it is that they write, then they read what they're writing, that you might have them read to each other in pairs, because pairs are perfect, and then they can have a conversation about it also in pairs. You know, so that way they're reading, they're writing, they're listening, and they're speaking, and then they're developing those 4 areas. Those are the 4 areas that your ESOL teachers or English language learner teachers work on building. So those, you know, these activities, this particular activity will help with all of that. Because what is the goal of reading after all, or one of the main goals? Because I know there are other goals, but the goal of reading, the main goal of reading, any ideas what that might be? Comprehension. Yes, that is correct. So you want to build comprehension with fiction and non-fiction text. That's half an hour.
Okay.
Is that good?
That's good.
Okay.